guys. I really, really appreciate it. So we'll just take a short period of time here to let you get to know Mike Clausen, my publisher, and then I'll read a few excerpts and do any whatever Q&A you have, and then we'll let you slide home. So, so Mike, you want to?
Sure. You get to wear that cool thing.
Put that over your head, and it'll record you and follow you wherever you go.
So it's been a pleasure working with Ray, and I'm looking up a quote here I want to read. So I've worked on, I think I've written 24, 25 books. Who else has written a book before? It's really hard. And, okay, good.
I was featured in the essay prompts.
Cool. So I have well, first of all, when I do workshops on writing books, I tell people writing a book is the second hardest thing I've ever done. Hardest thing is being married. And doesn't mean that it demeans marriage, it just means writing a book is really hard. So my favorite quote about writing comes from Winston Churchill. Writing is an adventure. To begin with, it is a toy and an amusement. Then it becomes a mistress. Then it becomes a master. Then it becomes a tyrant. The last phase is that just as you are about to be reconciled to your servitude, you kill the monster and fling him to the public. And that's about how it is, because you start out on a manuscript, it's really fun. A lot of people start manuscripts, and then it becomes a little bit tedious. All of a sudden it becomes this tyrant, and you're like, please, Lord, release me from this oppression. And then you fling it to the public. And it's hard. Anybody who finishes a manuscript, regardless of the quality, and his raises a high quality, but I just think the world of them. How many times, Ray, do you think you read through your manuscript?
Read through it?
Read through it.
At least 20.
Always at least 20 times. Yeah. So anyway, I just want to congratulate you on a job well done and working hard, and your support with Ray, because it means, every time I would write a book, I would sit down with my wife and I would say, okay, let's count the cost. What is it going to mean? I've got to do the dish. I'm not going to do the dishes for the next 3 months or whatever, because I've got to focus on writing this book. So to you as well, I just attribute this to you. So anyway, that said, I just want to congratulate you. And, you know what? I'm going to tell you how tedious the process is. So he's working on his manuscript. You finally get it done, and then you give it to the copy editor. During the copy editing process, somebody's working on the book cover. They're working with Ray on the book cover. So he gets the copy edits back. You have all these, it's all marked up. You got to go, that review function in Microsoft Word, you got to approve or not approve every little change. And you're going back and forth and back and forth. And then you send it back to the copy editor, then they send it back to you, then you send it back to the copy editor, they send it back to you. And finally, you're good to go. And so then you send your manuscript to the typesetter. The typesetter is the person who does all the layout work. So they take about 10 days. Then they send it back to you, and at that point they say, you got to read through the thing one more time. So then you read through it again, and you find mistakes, because every time you change formats, we get so used to seeing the same things in the same format. When you change formats, you see new mistakes. So then you got to mark it up again, send it to the typesetter back, and at that point we're ready to go. So it's a lot of work, not just the writing part, but the editorial side is a lot of work too. So anyway, just congratulations, Ray, on a job well done. And we're proud of you at Lumify Media to have you one of our authors.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's since I teach about PTSD all the time, I should say thank you to Mike for triggering me all this last hour. This has been quite a process. If you ever had the opportunity just to take a look at the website, I threw up a video there to give you a little bit of the backstory. This has been 3 years in the making and 3 losses in the process, and so I kind of weighed at one point whether or not to write some of that into this book, and it's entirely different. I think after going through all the iterations of copy editing. It felt like my dissertation all over again. It's like, I wanted that over a long time ago. But I think probably the greatest thanks, I think, that goes to my family putting up with me talking about a book all the time on vacations, and I saying to Linda about these people are writing their own story. I don't know where it's going to take me, and a lot more chapters than you actually have in the book itself. But there were a lot of tears shed in writing some of these chapters, and so I went back last night because Mike suggested I read a few excerpts for you, and some of them I still couldn't get through. I was crying even as I was writing them. So this is one time it's to release the beast, and then it's another moment is sending out your tiniest child into the wild and saying, "Go get him, tiger," and just hope for the best. And so I end up bracing myself a little bit about how it will be received, because a lot of people look for direction in grief, and this is telling somebody's story through grief. And so I am entirely indebted to my family for putting up with all that, and Linda's voice of encouragement, and there certainly is a part of it that I think I told Corey this, that I wrote this in the back of a car as we were driving back from a visit, and that was 14 years ago, 15 years ago now. And so when Mike and I started talking, and I had a couple different proposals, and I had one on the desk. It was like, I want to do this one, and he took a look at the other one and said, no, we're going to do that one. And it's like, oh, okay, well, there's a lot in this that I haven't done before, and it seems like God has managed to carry me along through writing a lot of this, and that's what you have in your hands is multiples. If I've ever been part of a multiple family, I guess this is what it feels like. So, so what I thought I would do is just read you a few excerpts, and some of these are kind of turning points, I think, in the characters that I have developed. And like I said, I wasn't attempting to teach people about grief because I do that every spring. So if you want it, come get it. But a couple different places that I let the reader kind of in on the inner life of one of the characters. And there are two characters, male and female, both young people. One's named Joy, the other's Ben. And Joy writes this in her journal. She says, there's something else that really bothers me. What is wrong with me? My own son died and I don't feel anything. Really? Something must be dramatically wrong that I can't seem to even generate some amount of sadness about it. Everything's just numb. That's my biggest concern today. I'm not just feeling anything, like I'm walking through my days in a complete emotionless state. I remember a book I was given about, somebody had me read about pain, and now it all is starting to make sense. My emotional nerves are seared in a numb state. Of course, knowing that isn't all helpful, because sooner or later they have to wake up, right? So what do I do with all this? Nothing? Isn't there some solution to be applied here so that my feelings come back? No, wait, what am I saying? Do I really want my feelings back? Unfortunately, my feelings are connected with Aaron, and clearly when he died, something in me died. I wish I knew what to do. Ugh, enough. I'm done for today. And then later I make a comment, why is it so hard to embrace or accept our humanity? Put simply, it's hard to embrace because it means that we have to grapple with our vulnerability and loss of control. In everyday life, we are not frequently confronted with these aspects of being human. As a matter of fact, we do everything we can to minimize our risk of being exposed and feeling profoundly out of control. There is no one single event that reminds us more of our vulnerability and lack of control than death. It is the defining aspect of our existence that reminds us just how vulnerable to hurt and pain we are, as well as our true lack of control. Being human means having relationships, and when those end, we feel pain. With a loss of this magnitude, however, though we shouldn't compare one loss to another, it is a tidal wave of emotions, thoughts, and feelings to such a degree that there seems to be nothing left. We've been left reeling with the impact of such an emotional tsunami that in some respects the numbness is a mercy. It provides us with an emotional breathing room we need to survey the landscape and then begin the journey again. And that's the journal of the girl in the story. The guy, I thought I'd give you an excerpt from one of his interactions. His mom has died, and he's sitting one evening with his dad, and the conversation goes this way. One evening when he was sitting with his dad by the fireplace and sipping a soda, he began to tell his dad about his concerns about his memories. "How long has this been going on, Ben?" his dad asked. "Oh, probably since I went back to school. I wasn't really paying attention to it, actually. All I was really worried about was getting through school and trying to keep my grades up." His voice trailed off as he was beginning to realize that the memories had been gone far longer than he assumed. "I certainly get that," his dad replied. "I did the same thing with work for a while, but I had the advantage, if you can call it that, of sleeping in an empty bed to remind me of what I was doing to try not to feel so bad, which is an understatement. I began to realize that if I was going to bury my grief and feelings over your mom being gone, I was going to lose all things as well, namely my memories. They're kind of a package deal, unfortunately." And that's one other interaction. And then one other thing I'll mention here. It's this is Ben's interaction with his dad. Recommends to him that he comes to counseling with him, and so he has he does that, and then he's in a class that's actually about grief and loss. And he is invited to come to the prof's office, which probably some of you have had. And he goes, the professor asks him, "So how about the loss of your mom? How's it impacting you?" And he says, "It's on again, off again, if you know what I mean. Some days are really hard, and I particularly feel the pain of not being able to call my mom and check in with her. And others, it's almost like nothing has happened. Those days I struggle with guilt about not feeling anything. I mean, isn't someone who is grieving feeling it all the time? And if you don't, does it mean that you're forgetting the person?" Dr. Salter smiled knowingly. "Those stereotypes sure come back to bite us, don't they? Generally, I would say that your experience sounds pretty normal." Now to your question about our hearts. I guess I take my inspiration from all my talks about the heart from Proverbs 4:23. Which says, "Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life." In Scripture, the heart is not only the seat of emotions, but actually the seat of everything about us. It includes our dreams, our hopes and decisions, and our emotions. Notice what that verse said, "For from it flow the springs of life," right? Oftentimes, springs were turned into wells that everyone could benefit from. Our hearts are the well of our lives, and from it flows life, or not to be a dramatic separation from God. So when I say our hearts are the core of who we are, vitally important to our journey through grief, I mean to say that we need to bring all of us into the journey, not just your thoughts and decisions, but all of us. And that gives you a little bit of a sense of what I attempted to do, was to give you a window into these two young people's lives. And quite honestly, if you read, those of you who have been my students or are, if you read the acknowledgments, what you'll see is that you're honored too. Because I learned as much from reading journals, which are many of them. You don't remember that, Mel, at all, do you? Never, yeah. Talk about PTSD, right? And the comments that are left behind. But that has managed to actually teach me a lot about grief, and quite honestly has been an inspiration to see you all oftentimes go into places that I don't see adults that are 40 and older go into. And that's nothing short of remarkable. So I did a very active wave to all my students who were the kind of testing ground for a lot of the stuff that I put into this book. I'm sure there will be others. I have often thought of some other ideas about following up with this so that people understand. Seasons of Grief was actually me standing on kind of the shoulders of giants because of a lot of the work that's been done in grief and loss, and we unfortunately get stuck on Kubler-Ross's linear stages instead of a cycle of seasons that we go through, and to some degree it just reflects my own experience with grief as well. So so that's what you have. I thought it was the best way to illustrate that rather than try to engage in some kind of didactic argument with somebody else in the academy, which I really don't care much about. So I'd rather talk to people's hearts, and that's exactly what you have. So I've talked enough. You guys have any questions for me based on what little you've seen or heard or anything else? Yeah.
And what stage do you think you grew the most when writing this book?
Wait a minute, say that again? What's...
In what stage of like writing this book
Yeah.
did you grow the most in?
Did I grow the most in? I think, yes. She asked, at what stage of writing the book did I grow the most in? And, well, it depends on how you're going to define growth. Because on the one hand, how many tears were shed? That was a lot. And that was in the middle the middle seasons. And, on my podcast, I've been talking a little bit about this, but those, the shoulder seasons, the spring and fall and winter, or spring and summer, there's a lot of things going on in there that I would say that the characters taught me as much as I captured, really. And it was those shoulder seasons, if you will. And the challenge is if after the fall is over, what's next? And we're all sitting in it, right? It's winter. And I think for people that are grieving, they hit that. So when I got to the fall, there was a relief because I felt it walking through these seasons of what these two people were walking through. So and it still generates emotion for me to even read some of this stuff because of how closely I got connected with my characters. So I now know what novelists feel, although I probably am not going to be writing any novel. I'll die first, probably. Don't do that. Don't do that, Mel. I don't need encouragement. Any other questions or anything about the process or? Yeah.
What was your why in writing this book? Like, why did you do it? Especially when it got hard.
Yeah. Yeah, the why, quite honestly, I'm looking at the why. It was my students. The observation I've made for a while, I think you've heard me say this too, Maddie, is that the generation that I'm teaching knows nothing about loss because they expunged their life of it. And so the why was, this needs to be heard, but I had to put it in a way that it would be read. And that was a lot of the why. I've always, the other why, I suppose, would be that, whenever I'm hearing people talk about stages, my teeth go on edge because it doesn't describe the grief process. for most people. It is a seasonal thing. There's good seasons like summer, and there aren't at all. And then they say, what's wrong with me? I'm starting all over again. So there's lots of it in it that I attempted to correct some misconceptions I think that people had. So the why, a lot of you are my why for doing this book. And I've had it in the back of my mind for a while, partly because again, it's better to tell a story around a truth rather than hit somebody upside the head with the truth. And so that embodies kind of even how I teach, right? So yeah, thanks for that. Good question. Anything else? Yes, ma'am. Uh-oh.
Oh, come on. I was just going to ask who is Ben?
Who's Ben?
For you, who is Ben?
You almost stumped me there.
That's who he's pulled from. And I feel like he's pulled from
Yeah.
a lot of moments in your office, potentially.
Yeah, he's very much of a composite. I mean, I here at CCU, I have a group of guys that I meet with, and I've been meeting with and at the end of every Friday, and a lot of those conversations are really there's a big discrepancy that we see between the genders in terms of how they handle grief, and I don't see enough nearly written by men to men about grieving, and that's another why. But I mean, Ben's very much of a composite of all of those conversations that I've had, and needless to say, I have probably a lot more female students in my office than male students in my office. So I got to find the conversation somewhere else.
So. That is a composite for your CCU dudes.
Yeah.
That's it. All right.
Thank you for the summary.
Just checking.
Thanks for the summary, counselor. Well done. Yes. Any other questions or anything? Yeah.
Do you feel like being able to finish this book and publish it may change your teaching structure in the future, where you might be able to develop a little bit more of like creative intent with the teaching process, and also providing a lot of inspiration for other students to also be creative with how they visualize these concepts.
Yeah, I think it's probably the other way around. I mean, this is an embodiment of my teaching, rather than this informing my teaching. I've been here at CCU for 15 years, and it gets all condensed down into these conversations. I really didn't think I would have the content for these conversations that I have in the book, and yet writing them was a lot easier than I thought, because I've had a lot of them over the years. I've been in practice for 40, so yeah. I mean, now the creative side of things, there's some relative limits in the academy about creativity, unfortunately. And so because of that, then I have to live within that structure. But I think even listening or seeing myself in action, because I watch a lot of the videos I shoot for classes, there's a expanded understanding even of looking at how we look at Scripture and our relationship with Christ, and how people grieve in Scripture as well. And that makes that story a lot more human. So yeah, it informs it both ways. I think the teaching has probably even more informed the book. So, anything else? All right, well, yes. Yeah, that's okay, Cam. I knew I could count on you.
Did you have any inspiration from any other fictional sources that might have helped you feel a sort of creative intent with character creation?
No, I got hijacked by this book. I mean, I really did. I certainly have taken some time leading up to it, reading good authors that write novels and watch how they structure the conversations and things like that in it. So in that sense, I've learned from that. But they're not necessarily my inspiration. I'm living in no man's land when it comes to the genre. This is not Christian living, and it's not a novel, but it's both. And that's I wanted to be there. I really did. So there's not a lot of that out there, I don't think. So
It shows a sense of originality, which
Yeah.
is important.
yeah. Anything else?
Do you have a favorite chapter?
Do I have a favorite chapter? Oh, darn. Yeah, the one I read from, A Spiritual Crisis, is a favorite. And the other one, which will take nobody by any surprise, is Safe People. So,
Why were they your favorites?
I mean, my voice runs through this all the time, and actually there are characters in here that probably, my students are probably the only ones that will know who the character is that I'm in. And so, I think the Safe People one is, that message is a foreign one, and so I intentionally moved into that in the area of grief, because that's usually where it shows its worst face. So that one I was particularly passionate about. That was probably one of the easier chapters I wrote. A Spiritual Crisis, it really fits in with a lot of what I've taught over the years about grief, revealing something about us and revealing something spiritual about us. And so, because we ask the ultimate questions when we confront death. And so that one was a lot of fun to write too. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I was really surprised at how, and I've heard other authors say this, but how the characters seemingly had their own story in mind and wrote it. I would have never understood that until after this process. But those two probably are pretty close to my heart. So.
I like how there's just one sentence here that says, "Holy cow, that was spot on."
Yeah. Anything else? Well, thank you all for coming. I am deeply touched that you would brave the elements to come. So we can hang out. There are lots of treats back there, and I have absolutely no intention of taking them home. So please. I'm speaking for me, but it has to go home in my truck. So, so thanks for coming. You can hang out as long as you want. We got the room until 3, and I'll be back there signing books if you want me to do that for you too. So, okay? Thank you.